Oh, it is a new year, 2020, and our theme at the Center for Spiritual Living this year is Beyond 2020 Spiritual Vision. Interestingly enough, 2020 vision is the minimum requirement for certain careers, like being a pilot, for example. Yet, it is by no means the best vision. It's possible for the human eye to see better than 2020. Nevertheless, the term 2020 vision has come to mean perfect vision. That's a great reminder for us not to settle for average and to be mindful of what society or the group mind asserts is normal, especially when it comes to living your own life and in the spiritual realm, where in particular we are called to look deeper, to look higher, to see more clearly the nature of things so that we don't accept the minimum as ordinary. This year, we are renewing our attitude towards life so that we can go beyond what we may have been accepting up until now. And if what you have seen in your life up until now is good, why not imagine something even better? As one of my teachers said to me, don't let good become the enemy of better. And if what you've seen so far in your life has been disturbing, still the practice is the same. Let us look deeply into the nature of life and connect with something that I believe is innate to us, this sense of possibility and growth and progress. The idea is that you and I can, with practice, become better at seeing through the confusion of life to something larger. We call it a greater yet to be, no matter what has gone before, which is why we say principle is not bound by precedent. I learned this at the Center for Spiritual Living. I learned a new way to look at life. And it was radical for me. It was radically new. And I admit in the beginning, I struggled with it. You know, it's difficult to undo years and years and years of thinking one way and then just simply replace it with a new way of thinking. Take, for example, our topic today, the love of God. Today we're talking about the love that God has for you and for me. And to do that, I had to forget everything I ever learned about love and everything I ever learned about God. Both of these words, God and love, are so charged with meaning from the past, from beliefs, from society, from family, from culture, from personal experience, from religion, that they were not useful for me to understand what unconditional love might be. The first thing I was invited to do in Science of Mind class, and I invite you to do the same as well, is to get clear on what I had been taught about God and what I believe now and what my preferred name for God is. It's not sacrilegious to explore your relationship to God or to find a relatable name. Jesus of Nazareth called God Abba, which is very intimate. It means something like daddy. The Bhagavad Gita calls God the adorable one. Ernest Holmes, our founder, called God all sorts of things, including lover of my soul, keeper of my spirit. The 48th name of God in Islam is the affectionate, loving one. So what is yours? What is your name of choice? when I started out, I had to begin with something that could help me separate from ideas that I grew up with and these new ideas I was learning about. So I became drawn to more neutral terms. The divine, the ground of all being, the thing itself. And then when I saw Star Wars, the Force, it appealed to me. It helped me understand this non-denominational power that is not only through creation, but is the very source of creation, an intelligence, a neutral power that could be used for good, for not so good, for everything in between. I liked that. It helped me understand. Then the second thing I was invited to do in Science of Mind class, and again I invite you to do it also, is to get clear on what I was taught about the love of God. Again, that was tricky because, again, I had to put aside everything I had ever learned about human love. Human love is not a helpful model when you're trying to understand divine love, Because human love, well, it's interesting, to say the least, Because we tend to have conditions on our love. We certainly feel justified sometimes not loving the people we don't love. And people we once loved, we may feel a distance from. In other words, it's changeable. Like I couldn't wrap my head around something that was constant, unchanging, permanent. To understand what absolute love means, I had to go beyond the human model. And I admit it can be challenging to get there. Yet, it is essential to understanding how the science of mind works. So I had to try on a different word than love. I liked the word absolute. And to understand what absolute love means, well, think of a fish swimming in water. Is it even aware that there is anything else other than water? And perhaps one of the fish in the pond becomes philosophical and feisty and declares, water is a myth. Water is dead. And even through the declarations, the water moves around it, in it, and through it. And in that pond, there is as much water available to this philosophical fish as there is to every other. It's equally and evenly distributed. I know it's an incomplete image, but it helped me. Here's another way to understand the absolute love of the divine. Think of how we love infants. They do nothing to deserve our love. Nothing, I tell you. They don't even earn it with words of affirmation, or good listening skills, no reciprocation or meaningful gifts or affectionate touch. No. And they certainly don't apologize when they throw up on our clothing. And they fall asleep when it's convenient for them, and they wake up when it's inconvenient for us. They're needy, high maintenance. And yet we love them just the way that they are, and just the way that they are not. Indeed, We know very little about them. We don't know how they will choose in their life. We don't know what or who they will become. We don't know who they will love. We don't know what good decisions they will make for their life. We don't know what bad decisions they will make for their life. And yet, we love them. It makes me think of my cat, Andrew. Perhaps you remember him. Sadly, he passed away through a mysterious illness. Here he is. And when Andrew was alive, he was kind of like that infant, He had no regard for my plans when I had to work. No, he had to eat. Priorities, And after he had eaten, he didn't thank me. In fact, he would lose himself in an ecstatic dance with a paper bag, and tear it up and shred it up, even though I had a plan to use that bag for something else. I would watch him and think, he's like a fish in the water. My love is all around him, and he did nothing to deserve it. He just has it without ever having earned it. He didn't pay the rent. He didn't do any chores. He didn't say something nice. He didn't earn his place in the world. He just has it. He taught me. He taught me to drop this idea of having to earn my life. I just have it. I had to drop this idea of earning the favor of a divine parent. I had to drop this idea of reward and punishment. These are human ideas. But the force, may it be with you, is just not like that. I had to move away from this reward-punishment model, to another, more complicated model, that of cause and effect. The model of freedom and consequence, not just on a personal level, but on a global level, because I had to wrestle with the complexity of the idea that my actions had consequences, some that I can see, some that I cannot. Not just for me, but for you and for the planet. It's complicated because we're connected to each other. It's not as simple as it seems. Someone tried to describe to me how it all works by saying this: love is freedom, and absolute love is absolute freedom. In other words, when you love someone, do you want them to be free? Well, yes, as long as they do what I want. As long as is a human arrangement. I understand that. And agreements are good. These kind of arrangements are useful for relationship, for raising families, for society to work still. Think of a love that wants you to have absolute freedom. Even if that means you make poor decisions. Think of a love that only says yes to you, my beloved. And then you are starting to think of what, in science of mind, we call the law of mind. It says yes. A while ago, I saw a meme on social media online. It's using gender-specific language, and it said, God loves you just the way that you are. He just doesn't want you to stay like that. It's good. But I was learning something even better. The absolute is in and through and around you, period. Change or don't change. Grow or don't. I laughed at the time when I saw that meme because I had already started to understand the divine differently, no longer as a parental figure that would disapprove if I stayed one way or changed or did this or that. I'd already started to think of my relationship with the divine more like that fish in the water, all around me, in me, through me, persistently, no matter what direction I swam in. I also started to think of the freedom I have in life and cherished that, I was beginning to dismantle this idea of an overlord watching me, who had a plan for my life and who would get mad at me when I made disappointing choices or couldn't figure out the plan. I have an 8-year-old girl in my life right now. And just recently, we were hanging out together, and I was showing her how to do a craft. Showing her to do this and that. And at one point, she said to me, "I don't want to do it like that." And I could see that what she wanted to do was clearly the wrong way to do the craft. And it would have resulted in ruining the project, and yet all I could feel for her was agreement and acceptance. I thought to myself, I trust her to become who she will become. I trust her to learn what she will learn. I trust that she's a work in progress, just like I am, just like you are. I trust that accepting her where she is right now is to love in the same way that the divine is present. Now, the difference between me and the power of creation, the divine, is that it is an unchanging spiritual power, and it doesn't have moods. It doesn't have preferences. And it cannot be bargained with. And it cannot be displeased. And it doesn't prefer one person or creature over the other. And it does not and cannot invade our freedom. That's how perfect its love is. It just continues to flow around me and you, making its creative energy available always. I had to learn about this power in me. I didn't know about it. And I had to learn that it could be used. And I had to learn to use it more beautifully than I had been using it. I had to learn how to use it responsibly and ethically and for good. And it took baby steps at first. And those first steps were to start reprogramming my mind by repeating these new ideas I had been learning to myself. Like, for example, there is a power for good in the universe, and I can use it. Now, keep in mind when I say good, good here doesn't mean human good, the polar opposite of bad. No, it means the absolute nature of mind. And I had to learn to use it in a more awake way. Directing it, being directed by it. I didn't know that this power could be used that way to change the direction of my life. And next week, we are going to be talking about the role that devotion plays when we are learning to use the power of mind. That's important. Someone once said to Dr. Raymond Charles Barker, was a well-known science of mind teacher and author. This person, after a lecture, said to Dr. Barker, "As I listen to you lecture, I don't get a felt sense of the presence of God because you're always talking about the mechanical law of mind." And Dr. Barker thought about it for a moment, and he realized that it was possible that by focusing on practical spirituality, he may have forgotten the thing that makes it all work: the warmth of being surrounded by an absolute. So after that conversation, Dr. Barker wrote these words: "There is an impelling force for good. It is God. It is in all and through all equally and distributed among every person and creature. And its main characteristics are intelligence and love." This month we are focusing more clearly on seeing that love for what it is and tuning into its warmth so that we may live our lives as if we are surrounded by it, like a fish in water, or like a cat that has a presence loving it in the background. There is an everywhere present power which is always with us, whether we have known it or not. It is the creative action of life, we say. We are always in it, and it is always in us. And when we think, and when we choose, and when we feel, and when we love, and when we use our beautiful imaginations, we are giving it a kind of direction to which it says. I'd love to begin experimenting with this idea. We've got nothing to lose. No effort is required. It works like this. You and I, we just allow and accept new ideas for your life to pass through your thoughts, for yourself personally, for all sentient beings, here and in Australia, and everywhere where there is suffering, for our neighbors, for our planet. This is how it works. You breathe in with me and sigh, letting your eyes close, and imagine that these words are being said silently in your own voice, in your own mind, or words like them. By contemplating love, peace, and wholeness, I create an atmosphere of love, peace, and healing in my life. For me, for my loved ones, for all beings. By contemplating love, peace, and wholeness, I am moved from within to help, to heal, to create, and to love life. By imagining a world in which loving kindness connects all beings, I become peaceful within myself, realizing that peace has always lived in me. I am harmonized with life, and it harmonizes with me. I am filled with the presence of the divine. It flows through me. And today, it flows in a new direction toward peace with all those around me. It flows as love from me and back to me. It flows in ways I know and ways I have not yet experienced. By imagining peace within all aspects of my being, I begin again to radiate peace from me, creating a beneficial field of loving kindness for others and myself. The law of mind responds to these prayerful thoughts, establishing me as a forgiving, loving, responsible, creative, and innovative individual. My history does not limit the power of life in me. Now I know there is a good for my life that goes beyond what I have ever had before. So I release gently the limitations, if any, of the past and lovingly embrace newness and growth. This opening in my heart and mind creates a field of wholeness for me, for my loved ones, and for everyone who comes into my thought atmosphere. I am tuning into spiritual truth, and I expect it to respond. And to bring this moment of contemplation to a close, I invite you to breathe in with me and sigh and say together, and so it is. Now, wouldn't it be lovely to have those words on a piece of paper that you could take home with you? No? Well, for those 3 people who would like it, I happen to have it over here. The only way you can get it, however, is you have to come and get it from me on your way out. Yeah, it's manipulative. But I am not the divine universe. Now, word of caution, I did it at 5 a.m. There's no punctuation and there's very poor grammar. Judge not. My mother-in-law gave me a mug. It says on it, "I'm silently correcting your grammar." It says karma. So I'll have that for you afterwards. If you come and say hello to me, I'll give you one.